everybody. Really lovely to see you, new friends and old friends, and I'm delighted to have my very lovely friend Nyasha with me here today. And it's very interesting. Nyasha's story is amazing, continues to be amazing. She continues to do extraordinary things. I know a lot of it, but I don't know all of it, so I'm looking forward to hearing exactly how she started creating her very amazingly successful social impact businesses and social purpose businesses and charities that she runs. And also because quite a few of you here have either got connections in Africa or are involved with social services yourselves and social care, and so there's a lot of synchronicity in the room, as there always is at these women's gatherings. So welcome Nyasha. It's the second time to the Seed Hub, and this time I thought while you were here I was definitely grab you and interview you.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Nyasha, we first met when I first set up Seed, I think.
Good, 100 years ago.
Yes,
just before you went to California.
Yes, so that was like 20 odd years ago.
Do you remember those Wednesdays?
Before I wrote the Seed Handbook.
Yeah, before you wrote the Seed Handbook.
Oh yeah, that's right. Where did we meet?
I think it was one of your conference where we started. The first time I met you, we were dancing.
Of course. Naturally.
Naturally. Yeah, I remember now. Was it somewhere in Ladbroke Grove?
Could have been 5 Rhythms or something, but anyway, it was a long time ago. And then I started Seed, and then you came and stayed with me in New York a couple of times and did retreats.
Yes, I did the retreats,
we've become close friends, and it's been amazing to see all the things that you've achieved in that time. So I'd like to start off with asking you how it all started. So you first came over here from Zimbabwe with your family as a teenager?
Yes, I was 12.
You were 12, and where were you living then?
When I first came to this country, I lived in Sheffield. My parents were there, and then we moved. My father went on to do a business administration degree at Bradford University. Right. So I moved. I finished my O-levels in Bradford.
You came from quite an academic family.
Yeah,
but you've got endless degrees.
Too many.
You've got masters in. Tell us what you've got.
Oh my goodness me! I've got masters in child psychotherapy. I've got my first degree was in chemistry, and it was my chemistry teacher who said, Nyasha, you just light up when you talk about children, and children have always been my passionate. Really, I'm absolutely driven. And
what was you told me a story once about childhood with children when you were always rescuing all the little kids.
When I was children. My parents were teachers in a village school in Zimbabwe, and the school was always it was a missionary school, always attached to a church. So on Sunday, all the mothers used to drop their babies and go to church, and they'll come back when I'm asleep with them, as well as trying to carry them.
So you must have been really young then.
Yes, my first memory is when I was 4, carrying a baby on my back, and having this competition wars with my mother. So I want to go and live with the family with got a baby. My mom said, oh no, you can't go and stay. You can go and visit the baby, but you can't go and stay there. And every time I used to really cry, because when you have a baby in Zimbabwe, you practice carrying it on a child's back. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes. So if I got there late, another child would have carried the baby. So I had to wait until the next day. So it was all traumatic for me. I would cry all the way back. Oh, I got there, the baby was carried by somebody else.
So you decided not to go in the direction of chemistry.
No.
And you went in the direction of childcare.
Yeah, children was my passion, and it was just unbelievable. So I decided to train to become a child a psychotherapist, because I was doing my PhD at Imperial College, and I was working part-time. I didn't get a scholarship to do it, and I was working part-time in a doctor's surgery, and all the young people used to come and talk to me, and so I thought I would like to train how to understand these people, children who've been abused, and so that's how I got interested, and so I just thought, it'd be interesting to learn how to do it. And then my professor said, Nyasha, why don't you do a degree in social work or psychotherapy? I thought, psychotherapy, and that was it. I've never met him again. I'm sure that guy, he doesn't know the amount of impact he made on me.
So how did you go from being a psychotherapist to starting your own business, social purpose business?
That was the beginning. When I trained, I started being contacted by local government like Lambeth, Southwark, and I was running. My first group was running a group of, I think it was 14 girls, sort of 14 to 16 who'd been sexually abused. So that's how I started doing that, and that really was my first sort of social enterprise. It was this problem of these kids in the community. So I used to pick them up or run the group and drop them off home.
Were they mixed race? And
they were different with children from the community in Southwark and Lambeth. And then I started getting one-to-one clients of children. The local authority would say, would you go to a children's home and see this child who's having problems, they've been abused or whatever. And it was then when the local authority was looking after kids in groups of 200, really big institutions, and whenever I went there, their friends would laugh. Kids can be really nasty, or there's something wrong with you, you're seeing a shrink, and just really laugh at each other. And some of them didn't want to see me because they said, oh, they'll laugh at me, they say I'm mad, that's why I'm seeing a therapist. So I thought what would be an interesting idea would be to have a living experience where therapy is daily living experience. So I thought, oh, how can that go about? So I didn't know anything about living experience or running a children's home or whatever. So I decided to do this MA in therapeutic childcare.
Another degree.
Another degree, like you do. I must have been about 24 by then. And so I went to Reading University and did that for 3 years, and I got my MA. And when I was there, all the people were there. They were directors of Bernardo's Children's Home and the therapeutic community, this, and I was the only independent person. And my home was the first independently run, not local authority, not a charity, in South London, and I had 6 kids.
And it was your house, your home?
It was my home,
yeah.
And I built this therapeutic home. And I started thinking about this group living experience. And the only way I could do it was to reduce the number of children. So I thought I would just have 6. And can you imagine having these 6 emotional and really horrendous, damaged kids, the worst kids possible. Their history and their profile were just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. I remember one of them was a boy soldier in Rwanda, and he'd been a boy soldier from when he was 8 years old, and he'd arrived on the docks in Tilbury Docks in Sussex, and really quite, his mental health was not right, his behaviour. And so yeah, that was my first.
So you were in your mid-20s?
I was 24, 25
you
then.
hadn't had your own children?
I hadn't had my children then, and I was just about to have my first child. And
what gave you the confidence to do all that? Was it
just
your
my
passion?
I was so driven by this that I can help these children, and really found it. It was, for me, it wasn't a business. Business came later. And I didn't even have a business plan. It was just horrendous.
I still don't have a business plan.
I still don't have a business plan. And when people talk about business plan and marketing plan, I think, what is this? I've never heard of it. And yeah. And I think it's best that way, actually. Not knowing, so actually can be a blessing. Can be absolutely a blessing. And yeah, that was just, I learned a lot really quickly. And a privilege actually to run a business. For me, I always say it's a privilege, because then you have a lot of people who are quite independent. Your staff, your team, the children you're looking after. The children I work with are the most vulnerable children in the society. They don't really have a political voice, and so it is really a privilege.
Yeah, I'm sure that resonates for you, Jane, doesn't it? As you're looking after children all across Somerset.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you'll come across the children I've worked with.
Oh, I a lot of the children you work with are adults now.
They're adults now.
They've got as far as Somerset. Somerset has its own problems.
Yes. Oh no, definitely. We have referrals from Somerset. We have children we look after.
Really?
Yes, from on my fostering agency. It started in my kitchen table. This was 10 years after running this children's home. I just presented it to, and I've been a foster carer for Westminster. And I said to my staff members in a staff meeting, would any of you take any of these children home? And 4 of them said, yes, we'll take them home. Because they'd been with us for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And I thought they could be integrated back in the family. No matter how much we loved them, we were still an institution. And, members of staff had a rota. And I thought they should really go back and live in a family setting. Especially the unaccompanied minors who came into the UK. They didn't have any family. And I just couldn't imagine. Because I came to UK with my family.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine someone just being dropped off in an airport or a port or whatever. And what it would be like to live in UK without family.
How did they get here? Who paid for them to get here?
Their families, there's normally wars going on. And they come into the country because their parents really love them.
Okay, so they sent them, put all the money into the child and send the dog.
They'll send one child from a village, they'll put all their money together, and they end up on the different ports all over the UK. They come through flights, boats, walk.
And that's still what's happening now?
Yes, that's still happening
dreadful.
now. Yeah.
British attitude to migration.
Yeah, there's
British
two
government.
coming. Yes, but I could write a book about that one. I shall not go there. So that was, so it's been a journey. Nearly 37 years I've been doing this now.
How many?
37 years.
37 years.
Mm-hmm.
It is a long
I've been
time.
working with children in the care system.
Yeah.
And my survivors are just incredible. Their stories are just so humbling, and their background and what they've become because of I feel because of my input, and it's a huge impact. I've made a huge impact to their lives, and made a difference to their lives.
Yeah.
To create teams and foster carers who care about these children, because it's very difficult to look after a child who's not yours.
Yeah.
Never mind a child within the care system, because of protocol and government legislation. So foster carers are really my unsung heroes. The things they do is priceless. You can't put a price to that. And really just impacting, just drilling down, that difference, that one day. We've had a child in our care for an hour. And I said, you need to make that hour count for the child. And that child is still in contact with the foster care, because they made a difference to her life. It was just a misunderstanding with the auntie and the mother. So the school phoned social service, and we found a family. And the mother was really struggling, and they're still in touch with the foster care. Sometimes I think they actually babysit for their child. So
how many children have you probably come through various organisations?
Thousands and thousands of children. I think in UK it's more than 12,000 children. And I think the same in Southern Africa, where I set up a charity with my mother, my late mother. And it was really starting from AIDS victims, where people were really dying of AIDS in Southern Africa. And they were living with children. Some of them were, they didn't have any parents, no aunties. They were just children households.
Wow.
So my mother was saying, I think because she was a teacher, so Nyasha, we need to make sure that these children, especially girls, go to school. And so we started with primary school, where she went as a child herself. And then we thought, what are we going to do now? They're now going to go secondary. We sort of grew with them. We never planned to look after them beyond.
Farmer Trust is that the charity in Africa as well as a charity in England?
Yes.
Farmer Trust you set up.
And it has got, the project is paying school fees in Southern Africa. And then in UK, we've got an organic therapeutic farm where we work with young people really with learning difficulties and adults.
Teach them how to grow vegetables and with that little animals. I've been there. So.
They have little certificate on small husbandry.
Yeah.
And they do have, and now they're going to have, we've got someone who comes and teaches them how to cook. So they're going to have catering certificate for cooking organic food. and on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
That's fantastic.
Just fantastic. It's just grown out of nowhere.
And I must also bring up the fact that you're walking.
I know. I do
You're
like
walking, which is
walking.
why I'm putting the hemp stuff on the feet. So you started off. How long ago you started this walk thing to raise money for your charity?
Yeah, 24.
Before COVID.
Well before. 2014.
And that was when you started walking up the Thames?
Yes,
Is that where you
I
started?
walked the River Thames and passed through Catherine's house. We stayed for 2 days, didn't we?
Your feet up.
To
And,
put our feet up, yeah.
and from there you started walking in Africa as well?
Yes, I walked in Africa. So now we walk in July. We start walking the first Saturday of which every July, and then we walked in Zimbabwe, we walked in Holland, we walked where else did we walk? And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then I thought, what am I going to do with my walk? We were supposed to go back to Holland and finish off. I don't know whether people know about this path called Pipa Paida, which ends in Spain. And we were supposed to go back where we ended the last walk. And then COVID hit, we couldn't go. So I thought, what shall we do this? And the government at that time said you could walk in your garden. You were allowed to walk in your garden. And I said, why not do this in your garden, anywhere? And so I had this idea of this walk for difference. And we walked, I asked people on my network to walk wherever they were. And so we didn't cancel the walk. We just walked. And I had a 103-year-old walking in his garden. God bless him, he's now died. And an 18-month-old walking in their garden. It was global, and it started in Japan. The walk was started before, while we're sleeping, and then you come to Australia, then you come to East Africa, and then it will end in Los Angeles.
It's amazing. You have these ideas and you make them happen.
I make them happen. And I've got so many connections. I just said, would you walk? In Japan, when I went to Japan, I made friends there. And then who were interested in social enterprise. And then I've got a stepdaughter in Los Angeles, and I've been to Los Angeles so many times to talk to other people. But anyway, I make these connections, and they all walked. And we raised more than £20,000.
Oh my God, that's amazing. You are amazing. You are an inspiration.
Just walked. So we're doing it again.
You're doing it again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4th of, I think it's 7th.
So you're always, it seems to me, even though you're responsible for so many family members apart from your own children, you've got your niece, nephew you're looking after now, and you've got all sorts of family members, but you are always travelling, and you do speak a lot to women's conferences all over the world, but particularly in Africa, which is obviously very important, because Africa is emerging, many of the countries are emerging, many of the women in those countries are emerging, and they need to hear from women that have made it and done it, and they can respect and see. So you've got a real,
it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I remember when you started going to Africa these conferences and doing more and more and more. Now you're doing your podcast, but you never stop. But what was the thing I was going to ask you about Africa particularly? Oh yes, what you're doing now. So you're now doing investment.
Yes, I've been to I was going to go and live in Southern Africa, mainly in Zimbabwe. And so I thought, what can I take to Africa? And from my own experience, and I really wanted to move away from charity model in that, it depends on the donors that day. Today is COVID, next week is whatever, mental health. So I just thought, what can I take? And what's been my experience in the UK as an entrepreneur? And the main thing I really struggled with was to access funding to grow my business. All my business has always been grown organically. I mean, I run a multi-million pound company, and I don't have £1 overdraft facility. £1. I'm not allowed to be overdrawn by £1. They said they don't understand my business model. What I do is a charity, or local government should be doing it. So the banks don't understand it. And honestly, this has been going on for the last 40 years. And it's a global problem. I'm not the only woman in the UK who really finds it difficult to access money. And it's clearly documented that women are not funded by VCs, the whole lot. So I thought, what could I take to Africa? So I decided to visit 25, I never do things with more with 25 African countries and talk to these women. So I remember turning up in Zambia. I was expecting to see 10 women, and 370 women turned up.
Wow.
And they traveled all the way, honestly, they traveled the whole day or night to come and see me, to talk about what is the most challenging and access to. I didn't want to go there with a solution. I wanted to hear it from them. And some of them, it was support. They don't need any money. They're really running fantastic enterprises. But just genuinely mentoring, basic support for someone to just bounce off ideas. And that's one of the things I found, that I found my entrepreneurship journey quite lonely.
Yeah.
Because you can't discuss things with, you don't know how you're going to be paying members of staff. You can't have that kind of discussion with members of staff at the end of the month. You know what I mean? So I found it, even interviewing a member of staff, in the years ago, it was sort of my word against them. You know what I mean? I didn't have anyone to sit with me in 3 interviews, and when there was grievance.
Community.
Yes, I didn't have a community. And so anyway, so support was quite important, and I really had sympathy with that. And so I found out the main thing was that people wanted access to capital to grow their business, to take it to the next level, and they also wanted support, and also networks to introduce them to global markets. And so I decided that I think the best thing for me to do is to set up a social impact investment fund for women entrepreneurs. And I'm just...
Do you want to explain what that is? Because that's...
It's an economic empowering fund where you, it's really, the basis of it's private equity.
Right.
And where you give, invest in a company, and you have shares in the company, like 10%, it depends, whatever the valuation of that company is. And you offer it it's long term. You can't invest today and then next week you say, I want my money back. It's normally minimum 5 years commitment. And then when we sell it or we want to move on, when we raise more money, we will give that money we've made from that investment to a next woman who needs it. So it's sort of a rolling fund.
I always talk about the African women, very different, rural village women,
yes,
and how they used to always grow their vegetables, take them to market, and with the extra that they had, they would buy seeds for the next younger women.
Yes.
So in a funny way, it's kind of the same idea, but obviously on a much bigger financial basis.
Yes, a much bigger
which
financial.
Which we don't do over here in this country.
Yes, it's just, And then I thought that, I wanted to start in Africa because I wanted to go and live and spend some time with my mother. And so that's why the Africa came about. But the fund is, for me, is it's a global problem. There's a lot of women in UK, wherever they are, who are unbankable, unfundable, for whatever reason, the mainstream institution doesn't recognize, or they're asking for assets and asking for collateral, and most women doesn't have access to collateral, to benchmark or to guarantee.
They're not allowed to own their own property.
They're not allowed to inherit. That's right, and that is a big problem. So anyway, I'm going to, then COVID hit, just as I was about to appoint a fund manager, because I'm not a financier, I'm not a fund manager, I don't understand. You have to be a fund manager. It's almost like being licensed with the financial authorities.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to partner with a fund manager, and then COVID hit, and then I had all these losses. 8 people of my family have died in the last 3 years. So it's been really back in the back burner, but it's still there.
Yeah. And can I just interrupt something else? When I started going to Africa and hearing what was happening to women entrepreneurs in other countries, one of the things that came up was that there was so much blockages for women to start businesses. They weren't allowed to start a bank account. They had to get a license. They were often expected to give sexual favours to the officials to get the license. And that was
that's still
the same.
It's still going on, and the other thing I found when I went to all these countries is that a lot of women are really doing really interesting business, but they don't have a bank account because of all this.
Yeah.
They don't have anything. They don't have a business plan. They don't have they don't have structures. They don't have a company name. They're just doing it in their name, and they keep the money underneath the pillow. Literally.
Yeah,
and
because it will be stolen by the men.
Yes, and I remember sitting next to this woman, and she's a bank manager, but she had this round, she does, they used to give each other $1 a month, the 20 of them, so they would have $20, and that woman would go and buy a wheelbarrow to carry their things on their farm. And she said now they're giving each other $20,000 per month. The 20 of them.
That's how much they've grown their business.
And now yes,
enormous
enormous fun. And she said only a few days before I arrived in Tanzania, she just she'd been asking these women, I think we need to open a bank account because I can't put it, she was a treasurer, I can't put it underneath my bed anymore, it's too much money. And she said, we just opened our first bank account. And this is just an ideal company which I would really love to leverage all the skill and fantastic, but they're not investable. They don't have anything formal.
No.
And it's so sad.
It's crazy, but what they're doing for each other is something we have to learn about in this country, in the UK, and in so many other countries. There is so much. I always said when I wrote or did my talks, there was so much to learn from African women because of the way they support each other. But the negative to that was they don't tick the boxes in terms of having the structure. So there's so much we could give maybe to them, and they can give to us. You'll obviously see your role as a bridge in between supporting and looking after all your extended family and everything else you're doing. This is the future, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the future for me, and it's so exciting. And to be able to, to support somebody in that position or that group of 20 women to formalize the whole thing, and I can, mentors and provide mentors for them to just write that, even if it's the back of an envelope. I really believe that, that works. And to have the company registered, have a name, have all these, really simple
Very
things.
simple things that they need to do to take them to the next stage.
To the next level.
Wow,
Absolutely.
how exciting.
Just very exciting.
How challenging. And you just come back from Africa a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, and whenever I go anywhere, I see these social entrepreneurs everywhere. Honestly, they sort of seem to just, it's just incredible. I was in Zanzibar and I was just talking to this woman, and she's making organic soaps and from bamboo or whatever. And they said, factory of it. And I thought, what are you doing with it? You know what I mean? It's just incredible. Incredible.
I'm just thinking about Mandy, who we've got sitting right here, whose background is finance and is from Zimbabwe, and I'm sure is very interested in seeing if there's some conversation where you could take your skills from the high level financial work you've done in this country and help the women back in Africa. I certainly feel very excited about it all. So would anybody like to ask some questions? Because Nyasha's story is certainly not complete. It goes on and it will carry on going on for a very long time. But I mean, I can see for Jane things have resonated. Lizzie?
Yeah, I was just taking you quite back far to the beginning of what you said. You briefly mentioned that policy and legislation we have in this country in relation to children and young people was very wrong, and I wondered if you thought what you thought needed changing or around that.
In England today, I mean, I was quite fundamental in challenging the policy, and I still advocate to move away. For me, sometimes I feel that I'm managing paper and not doing no caring whatsoever, because I've got to tick the boxes. There's so many things they want from us. If a child going to the room, they want it documented. And even our foster carers, they should log certain things. They should go on the computer and log what the day's been, and if the child had a scratch. It's all for safety. I understand the reason, but it can be, for me, I think it can be health and safety gone wrong. and it needs to be challenged. But when you're starting something, if you don't have that confidence, but I think now I've got the confidence to challenge that and saying why do we have to do it that way? And I think actually some of this legislation are not written. First of all, I don't think it's written by someone who's a parent, and I don't think it's I don't know who's written them. Even simple things. The other day I was saying the way we assess someone to become a foster carer. I said, who wrote it? Who even created this form? It just sounds so odd. And if you can't tick that box,
like grey men sitting in offices in white, all
I think it's just so. And I think they've never been a foster parent. That's why. And I'm thinking, how can we get our foster carers to write this form? Because they're the ones who have been impacted, and a lot of people actually don't become foster carers because of that form. They're so put off by it. They say, why do I have to go through this? For me to look after a child who is in need. Yeah, so it is, but as I said, it's only with experience now I feel quite confident and I can challenge local government, I can challenge team leaders around policy and including carers. For me, I've been really advocating for that carers are part of the team in looking after a child. They're the ones looking after them 24 hours. They should be invited to every meeting to do with that child they're looking after. They're part of the professional team. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones looking after that child 24 hours. And it's taken a long time for government and local government to think and to always say we need to include them. And actually, wherever I can, I'm always saying my foster carer is going to come to that meeting. I'm not prepared to work with you unless you can include them. So it's work in progress. It's work in progress.
Shane, you're very much on both sides of it, aren't you? Having been a foster parent and Sue.
Got through the forms,
Yeah.
the assessment, and the writing daily logs for 2 years.
Oh my goodness, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And what about for care homes, Ashani? Because you have it. It's a different. You're not dealing with children. You're dealing with adults.
The vulnerable adults, yeah.
Yes, but do you find that all the paperwork and the bureaucracy?
Definitely. I think one of the things that our job is not the same anymore. I mean, I'm not an auditor.
Yes.
I'm not an auditor, I'm not someone who needs to be on a computer. This is not what I signed up for 20 years ago. I signed up to care, to contribute, to be of service, to change the life of people. But I do find myself being an auditor. I have an audit for all the audits. I was looking at the form today and I thought to myself, what am I doing with my life? I literally created this morning. Well, not created, I was a bit ashamed of putting it up and I thought I need to. I have an audit for all the audits that needs to be there so that I don't get done.
What can we do to make a difference? Well,
I personally, I hope this doesn't get out. I have seriously thought, I have been contacting some managers and I thought, someone needs to do something. I think our regulators are not regulated. That's how I feel. And what I feel is, it's very dangerous to say that in front of social services, but what I feel is there is not a recognition that there is private businesses, small businesses, and you have big Bupa care homes. So for me, I'm one person doing 10 persons job, but in big care homes or big organizations, you have someone else coming to audit something, someone else coming to do such risk assessment, but we are judged the same way. And I thought the regulator is just piling things on us, and we are moving away from care, and we are just accepting it. And I thought to myself, someone need to go to ombudsman and say, we're gonna crack, because if you can't what we have to do or requested to do, there's no way we can do that in 48 hours, 48 hour a week. So we are being expected to work more. So either you do a great job, you lose your family life, but if you work for a small organization, you can't have both. So I was thinking, to make a difference before I leave, I really need to go to ombudsman and say, who is assessing this.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know if with children if something like similar, happens.
I mean, recently there was that incident of that teacher who killed herself. The
Yeah.
teacher, but because Ofsted was coming, we had criticised her.
Yeah, yeah. One of the people that I coach was a head teacher, and she's now got a whole network, an online network for teachers to communicate directly with each other. And she was friendly with the woman that killed herself. We were talking about that on one of the calls the other day. You know, that the teachers, that they want to do their jobs. It's like carers, teachers, foster parents want to do their jobs, but they're getting killed by bureaucracy. It's a shocking thing. I don't know the answers. I'd love to think between you all you come up with them, because it's so crucial. It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anybody else got any questions or comments they'd like to make? It's,
I'm just interested in one of your comments earlier. When you get these kids arriving on the road and they have been sent by loving families, which some of them from that, do they manage to keep in touch or get back in touch? I mean, obviously, maybe 30 years ago it wasn't as easy because, you know.
Yeah, nowadays with the phones it's a bit easier, but some of them don't have any contact. They don't know whether their parents are still alive or have died. Some of them, their family have died.
It's tragic.
We've had a young person in Somerset whose sibling has later arrived somewhere else in the country. We managed to they're now living together.
That's lovely when you do
but
that.
it took time, and they kept saying there's someone somewhere.
Because that must be the hardest thing to lose everything.
And some of them have spent 9, 10, 11 months getting here as well, and unpacking their journey here and what happened to them.
And also
on top
what
of why
they
they
tell
had to,
you.
it's horrific.
Yes.
And of course they'd have the language barrier, so actually unpacking that with them is
And
really
also
tricky.
trust, I would imagine, it's
Absolutely.
hugely hard.
We had a child we placed a long time ago from Vietnam, and we did not know his name for about 6 weeks. And we were looking after him. We did not know what his name was.
Ray Farah, I think, like that.
Yeah.
The name was changed.
they can check. There was a story actually about a Vietnamese boy on BBC News this week. I'm not sure if he was even in Southwest, and he didn't speak a word of English, and he got sent, but he got encouraged by the teachers, and now he's got going on to university. And
We just had a young person get their degree at university.
It's so encouraging,
It's
isn't
so
it?
encouraging, such a happy outcomes. It's just incredible.
Yeah,
It's so rewarding, actually.
yeah. And children need protection so much, don't they? I mean, the abuse that's going on is just horrific. So lots of work to do. It's
So
amazing.
what next then?
Oh,
What are you working on currently and next?
What next? You wouldn't believe it. What's next? I've got so many ideas. I'm just setting up a virtual assistance, database for women who are affected by COVID in Africa again, and really talented people who just never went back to work, or their local markets, or they were selling things, and because of lockdown they were never able to go back because they lost their stock or whatever, and just talking them again in the when I did my travel during COVID. They're very talented digital marketeers, and they've got MBAs in administration. Goodness me! So that's next. I'm quite excited about that. And
Where in Africa are you doing that?
Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Ghana.
Big countries.
Yes, interesting. Getting that database going, and today or yesterday, actually, I went to see someone in Bristol, and I'm really into social housing, and I'm looking at the issue about women running away from domestic violence and accessing housing. And mental health, coming out of hospital, learning difficulties as a social housing. And one of the things which the woman I went to see yesterday, she's actually a foster carer, and she's been made homeless because the landlord, because of the new landlord grant, they can't afford. They want to sell the property, and I know that's another barrier for people to care in their own houses, because they don't have access to accommodation. So things like buying the property and renting it out and then in a few years' time, when they're able to, for them to buy the house. So that's what's my next project I'm looking at the moment. Trying to, I'm always thinking of a social problem, and I'll say, how can I make that, how can I make a difference by just reframing the problem, and thinking, especially accommodation in London, it's becoming so expensive, and people who would like to care can't afford to have a child or an adult, because another thing with Banya does, we do shared life. It's actually adult fostering, people who can never live alone. And all of them say, oh, I would really love to do it, but I don't have a spare room. And also, some landlords, the minute you mention anything about care, they said, oh, you can't foster in my house. You can have your own children, but you cannot foster there. Or anything to do with looking after a vulnerable adult. So I just want to change it, the narrative, and thinking we can change it, we can reframe it. And I'm always thinking that I could make a difference, but sometimes I need to choose what my battles are. Sometimes I think, goodness me, I've chewed a bit more.
Sometimes you need to relax.
Yes.
So that's what you're going to do this weekend.
That's what I'm going to do this weekend.
We're going to have a nice weekend of relaxation.
Yeah.
It's amazing, amazing. So, I mean, it's an extraordinary. Nyasha is an extraordinary woman, clearly, and her story is amazing. If anybody would like to ask anything else, I'm sure you'd also be happy to not walk, but maybe move around the tables.
Yes,
and
yes.
We've got dessert coming in a minute.
Yeah.
And talk 1-to-1 or 1-to-4.
Yeah.
A bit more. It's just not a coincidence, nothing ever is. Even in this small group, there's so much synergy with people in the room and what you've got to say, and maybe the things that could, inspire or be of help to each other.
Yes.
So I hope, I know that you will agree with me that Nyasha is the most amazing, incredible woman and inspiration for so many, and so much work she's done and so much work she will continue to do. And so you're not going to go and live in Africa now?
No. I'll visit.
You are in Guernsey a bit too much, I think. Not Guernsey, where are you? Yeah, you're in Guernsey a bit too much. Yeah, it's all those plane journeys. But anyway, it's incredible the work you're doing. I'm just full of awe, and I'm always here to support and help in any way I can. But anyway, so thank you very much, everybody.